Two NASCAR Cup Series playoff drivers signed contract extensions with their current teams. Meanwhile, another NASCAR team's future looks a bit shaky. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. We have some good news to talk about today. We also have some potential bad news to talk about, as well as kind of everything else in between. NASCAR President Steve Phelps held a press conference with media yesterday, and so he gave a little bit of insight into many burning questions that I see you guys asking almost daily. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but let's start with the bad news. You know, when someone asks, do you want good news or bad news first? Usually I say bad news. Just get the bad news out of the way. So we're gonna start with, I should say, the potential bad news. There's nothing confirmed just yet, but 2 nights ago really, rumors began to circulate online about the future of Germain Racing, the team that runs the number 13 Geico Chevrolet driven by Ty Dillon in the NASCAR Cup Series. From what I could see, these rumors started when a website named autoracing1.com, I have not heard of it until now, I do not know how legitimate it may or may not be, but it published a story a couple days ago saying that Germain Racing was going to close down operations at the end of this season. There wasn't a whole lot else to that article, so a lot of fans were left with more questions than answers. But yesterday, Bob Pockris from Fox Sports actually reached out to Germain and he tweeted this: Geico hasn't made a decision on 2021 and whether it will sponsor Germain. They haven't said no, they haven't said yes. Teams want to know so can make plans. Sponsors watching economy and trying to figure out value of sponsorship if at-track COVID-19 protocols continue to limit fans. And then he tweeted a statement from Germain Racing. At this time, anything is on the table. Germain Racing does not have a signed sponsorship contract for 2021, and Bob Germain is exploring conversations for a potential sale. So that validates that initial rumor from autoracing1.com in a pretty major way. It definitely looks like things are not going super well at Germain Racing, a small single car operation that is heavily reliant on Geico as a sponsor. They lost Twisted Tea as a sponsor. They were a very minor sponsor for that team the last few years, but they lost them during the offseason. Geico is their main partner. Geico also this year is one of NASCAR's 4 premier partners, so you've seen plenty of Geico signage around the tracks this year. You've seen Geico commercials during both Fox and NBC broadcasts, but they're also on Ty Dillon's car. Some people forget that. It sounds like Germain Racing's future is reliant on Geico, and Geico has not yet made a decision on whether or not they're going to continue to sponsor that team. I'm sure Geico is still going to be around NASCAR in some way. They're probably still going to be a premier partner. I'm not sure how long that agreement they signed at the beginning of this year was for, but I'm sure it's more than a 1-year deal. But this report right here highlights a very real and very important concern I have for many teams, not just Cup teams, but especially Xfinity and Truck Series teams as well, moving forward. Obviously, we're still in the middle of a pandemic and many races coming up on the schedule still are not allowing fans to attend, and there's no clear end to that in sight. We don't know what effect the pandemic may or may not still be having on the world and on NASCAR specifically once Daytona rolls around next February. NASCAR has not even revealed the 2021 schedule yet. Usually that's revealed months ago at this point, but no, they're still haven't revealed it. And Steve Phelps actually said, and we'll get to that in a minute, said that they're likely going to reveal it in segments, kind of like they've done for 2020. So that spells really bad news for a lot of small teams that are trying to sell sponsorship ahead of time. And now even I've heard personally from several, small teams in the Trucks and Xfinity series and about how difficult it is to sell sponsorship right now because many races don't have fans at the track. And for a lot of small teams, the at-track experience, being able to bring their sponsors and like their employees or the CEO, the owner, the founder, the people who are sponsoring, being able to bring them to the track and give them the race day experience, a lot of times that's what these people are paying for. But right now, the only thing that teams are able to sell sponsors right now is TV exposure. And I'm sorry, if you're running 30th place, even in the NASCAR Cup Series, like Ty Dillon often is, you're not getting much TV exposure. So I can't imagine Geico is getting anywhere near their return on investment for this year's sponsorship the way things have gone. So this is going to be a very real problem going into 2021. If NASCAR can't nail down a schedule for next year, if NASCAR and local officials still don't know whether or not crowds will be allowed in 2021, that is going to make it super difficult for Xfinity, Trucks, and Cup Series teams to sell significant sponsorship for next year. And as a result, I will not be shocked if we see other teams ultimately have to sell or go out of business. Of course, Germain Racing is a Cup Series team. They own a charter. That's an expensive piece of real estate that they can definitely sell. May not be as easy for teams in the Xfinity and Truck Series. Right now, we have not lost many teams. There have been maybe some that have limited some of their operations. Obviously we know Levine Family Racing and the Cup Series is expected to close this year. But I'm honestly impressed. We're still getting close to full fields at all these races. But if the uncertainty we're in right now, where on a week-to-week basis, we don't know if fans are going to be allowed at the track, if there's going to be fan activations, if there's going to be sponsorship booths at the track, if there's going to be driver appearances, if we're still doing this next year in 2021, teams are going to go out of business. I mean, that's just the truth. Cup Series teams will sell, and it's going to start with the small single car teams like Germain Racing. They don't get exposure. They're not talked about. It's a small single car, very tight-knit operation over there. Those are the teams that are obviously going to fold first, but if this continues for a long period of time, do not be surprised if other teams, specifically Xfinity and trucks as well, lose sponsorship and often, suddenly don't show up one week. This is a very real concern. And this isn't really a NASCAR problem right now. This is a pandemic problem. This is just a result of all the economic shutdown and stuff in the country. I mean, it just is what it is. That's unfortunate. Obviously, it's expensive to own a NASCAR team and run a NASCAR team, so sponsorship is extremely important, all that stuff. Those are all very real concerns that NASCAR is working to change over the next several years. But right now, right here, if Geico doesn't re-sign with Germain next year, if other teams can't land sponsorship for 2021 because of all this uncertainty, it has more to do with COVID than it does NASCAR or the NASCAR business model. I'll just get that out there right now. It sucks either way, and it could very well put teams out of business. So we'll see what happens to Germain Racing. It sounds like they are exploring the possibility of selling that team. We'll see what happens. It sucks. You hate to see a small team like that go away. I don't know what this means for Ty Dillon. Does he kind of get absorbed by RCR? Of course, he is Richard Childress's grandson. Is he going to open up a third team? Maybe things won't be as bad as they look. Hopefully we don't lose a competitive car. Competitive is being generous, but hopefully we don't lose, a full-time car, and we'll see what happens. But that's the news. That's the report going on around Germain Racing right now. Anyway, let's shift now into some good news. A couple high-profile NASCAR Cup Series drivers just signed contract extensions yesterday. Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal reported that Smithfield Foods will renew its major primary sponsorship deal with Stewart-Haas Racing for 2021, with Eric Almirola continuing behind the wheel, per company executives. And he also says that Smithfield's deal is for 25 races as the primary sponsor, which I'm not entirely sure, but I believe that is a decrease by 4 or 5 races from this year. I think this year they're the primary for like 30 out of 36 races, so a decrease, but still a big deal that a major sponsor like that is still going to sponsor the majority of the season for that team. And that's good news for Eric Almirola. He's had a very good season, has not won, but has been very consistent. Happy that he's going to be around for at least one more year in competitive equipment. And also, kind of on the note of SHR, Greg Zipadelli from SHR said earlier this week that the team is hoping to keep their same driver lineup they have now for 2021, which would be Harvick, Custer, Almirola, Boyer in the Cup Series, and obviously Chase Briscoe and Xfinity. However, Zipadelli did say that the team is open to the possibility of moving Chase Briscoe up to Cup, or even grabbing Kyle Larson, pulling him back from the dirt ranks and bringing him back into the Cup Series should things work out a certain way. But right now, it sounds like their plan is to keep Clint Boyer in the 14. Clint Boyer has said that he would like to stay racing there and stay with the team beyond this season, but they have not yet signed an agreement, a contract extension. So the 14 car is still very much the one unknown at SHR going forward. Now, another driver who signed a contract extension yesterday was William Byron, the most recent NASCAR Cup Series winner. He signed a 2-year extension with Hendrick Motorsports to stay in the 24 car through the end of 2022, which means we will see William Byron get to drive the next-gen car, at least for 1 year with Hendrick Motorsports. Hopefully things go well and that continues to extend, but this is a big deal because recently we've seen a lot of 1-year extensions, 1-year deals. This is a 2-year deal, or this at least goes beyond 2021. So shows that Hendrick Motorsports at least has a decent amount of faith in William Byron. I mean, he's cheap. Let's not kid ourselves. They're not shelling out that much money for William Byron, especially not compared to what I bet they paid Jimmy Johnson this year. But good news for William Byron, and really cool that this comes, of course, just a few days after his first Cup Series win of his career. So this has to be a really special week for William Byron. I'll bet he's having a good time. Anyway, so that's the good news. Now let's get to the in-between stuff I teased at the very beginning. So, like I mentioned, NASCAR President Steve Phelps held a virtual press conference with the media yesterday and went into a little bit of detail when answering some of the hottest questions that NASCAR fans have had in recent weeks. So we'll go through a few of his responses and kind of react to them here. When talking about the 2021 schedule, Phelps is anticipating new tracks being added to the 2021 schedule in addition to Nashville Superspeedway, but those remain uncertain as talks are ongoing. Also, Daytona Road Course is a possibility, but would not replace one of the Daytona Oval races. Whew, I like to hear that. I mean, Daytona Road Course was cool and all, but I do not want to see the 500 or the Coke 0400 replaced and run on the road course. Stay on the oval, please. But that is certainly encouraging. Remember, a couple of years ago, Steve Phelps and NASCAR said, oh yeah, 2021 is going to be a crazy year, a bunch of new tracks. And then they kind of walked that back a year or so later. They're like, oh, we might have 1 or 2 new tracks in 2021. And of course, they announced Nashville Superspeedway. It sounds like they've gone back to their original promise a little bit. We might see one or two other surprises next year. I've heard Road America has been highly rumored as a new road course they might add. Some people have talked about Iowa, but I think Iowa Speedway's future is very much uncertain, so I wouldn't bet on Iowa being added to the Cup Series. And I'm still going to throw this out there. What about Circuit of the Americas in Austin? NASCAR and Tony Stewart and SHR did single car runs at the track last year. I don't know, don't be shocked if another race is added to Texas, or maybe that takes one of Texas Motor Speedway's dates. I would be surprised, but don't rule it out entirely. Also, in regards to the schedule, this is another one reported by Jeff Gluck from Phelps. One-day shows are certainly possible for 2021. However, midweek races seem to have taken a hit due to the disappointing ratings. Phelps wouldn't rule out midweek races, but said they're on the lower end of probability for making a return next year. And this isn't too surprising, we talked about it on this show, but consistently this year, I know they had to run the midweek races to get all the races in, pandemic and everything, but ratings for the midweek races have been consistently lower than what those races would normally draw on a Sunday afternoon. So to me, that made me kind of give up on midweek races. I don't really want to see them. I mean, it's cool to have a race on Wednesday night, but I kind of prefer the races to be run on the weekends, honestly. It sounds like NASCAR and it sounds like the networks likely kind of agree with that sentiment. It's disappointing that the ratings were as low as they were, but NASCAR's been on Sunday afternoon, Saturday night for literally decades. It was going to be really difficult to convert that audience to a new day and time. That was going to be hard to do. That was a tall task. Also, with all the rumors around Denny Hamlin and Richard Petty Motorsports, Hamlin possibly investing in Richard Petty, Toyota being involved, that kind of thing, this was asked of Steve Phelps today, and this was his response to the question of, can a driver drive for one team and own a separate team? Here's what Steve Phelps had to say. A driver on a 4-car team can invest in another team so long it is not just a cover to make it a 5th car for that organization. Phelps said Denny Hamlin has made no request to NASCAR to do so. Of course, Denny Hamlin last week said that he doesn't have anything to announce imminently, but he did say that he is very interested in continuing his NASCAR career beyond just driving. And we do know that Richard Petty Motorsports has talked to somebody at Toyota, and it was also recently reported by Adam Stern that Andrew Murstein, current co-owner of Richard Petty Motorsports, said that yes, we have talked to a current NASCAR driver about an investment opportunity. All signs point to Denny Hamlin. We know that they've had conversations, but it sounds like they haven't reached an agreement yet. But now it sounds like, from NASCAR's perspective, if they do reach agreement, if Denny Hamlin does become a partial owner at Richard Petty Motorsports, as long as they check a few boxes, perhaps it sounds like Denny Hamlin will be allowed to co-own Richard Petty and also drive for Joe Gibbs Racing. It sounds like that will not be a problem. Again, this was a rule that some people asked me about on these videos. It's a gray area. NASCAR has kind of selectively enforced it. I mean, they've never really had to enforce it in a major way, but it's in the rule book, but not usually talked about that much. So if Hamlin does end up investing in Richard Petty Motorsports, it should not be a problem from NASCAR's standpoint, but that's what Steve Phelps had to say. All right, we're just blowing through these topics here. Let's end on a high note. From reporter Dustin Albino, on a Zoom call with media this afternoon, Steve Phelps noted there's never been more interest in potential new team owners entering the sport as there is right now since he's been around. Doesn't entirely surprise me. Justin Marks, former NASCAR driver, announced a few weeks ago that he's starting a new Cup Series team and is planning to begin a competition next year called Trackhouse. Certainly, with the next gen car on the horizon, the business of NASCAR is going to change long term. I think the next gen car is going to make owning a NASCAR Cup Series team more affordable than it is now. So it's not entirely shocking to hear that a few more inquiring eyes are peeking in on NASCAR and are at least asking questions, or at least showing some interest. Steve Phelps and NASCAR said like a year ago that with the next gen car, they have gotten interest from multiple manufacturers who may at some point enter into NASCAR, which would be huge if you got even just one more manufacturer to join Chevy, Ford, and Toyota. That would be amazing. Of course, this is kind of an oxymoron from what we started this episode talking about with, Germain Racing possibly going out of business and selling the team. So take it with a grain of salt. And of course, these team owners, they could just be a lot of Spire Motorsports. And Spire Motorsports seems to believe they're trying to be competitive here in the next few years. They're working towards being competitive. That's what they say. But in the short term, it's hard to believe many of these potential team owners are really going to have what it takes to be competitive right off the bat. But these days with technical alliances and of course the next gen car being a spec car, spec chassis, it might be easier now than ever for a new team to get into the Cup Series and be competitive, sooner rather than later. So we'll see what comes out of that, but some optimism to end today's episode. That's all I've got. We covered a lot of bases today. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. We talk about NASCAR literally daily. I still have some other big videos planned for later in the week. A busy week here before the playoffs start. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. A big thank you to my fantastic Patreon supporters. Check out that top link down in the description if you also want to support the show. Really means a lot to me. Like I said, some other other big episodes still planned for this week. I'm gonna give you guys my full round-by-round playoff predictions. We gotta look at the throwback schemes this weekend. I've peeked at a good handful of them, and they're pretty fantastic this year, so I'm excited to go through all of them with you guys. So lots to look forward to this week before Darlington this weekend. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll see you all very, very soon.